Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, a big welcome. My name's Jenny, and on this channel I make mainly lifestyle videos, which pretty much means that I make videos about everything and anything, whether it's chronic illness, mental health, physical health, disability, Disney, fashion, beauty, travel, and everything in between. Hopefully there'll be something on here that you'll enjoy, so I hope you'll stick around and watch this video. In today's video I wanted to make a video about Pain Awareness Month, which is in September, so this month. It is obviously a month to try and raise awareness of chronic pain, or even acute pain I think as well, and the different experiences of different people, trying to raise awareness for better treatments. And so I thought it was a really important subject to cover, because chronic pain is something that I experience on a daily basis and have done for a number of years, and it's still hugely misunderstood by both the general public and the medical profession, and there's still a long way to go in trying to find good ways to treat pain. So I thought what would be good is if I actually made a couple of videos, because I can anticipate them being a bit long. So in this video I am going to talk mainly about the different types of pain people can experience, the different conditions that can cause pain, and what it's actually like to live with pain. I have enlisted the help of some various other people who have pain as well, because I thought it would be more interesting to hear a wide variety of people talking about pain rather than just me. So yeah, I put some things out on social media and got a really good response. So hopefully we've got a really good mixture of kind of experiences and conditions, and yeah, different kinds of pain that people have. So I hope you'll find it interesting to hear about people's experiences of pain, whether it's because you have pain yourself or just because you want to know a little bit more about what it's like to live in pain. So yeah, let's get started. I've got a few questions that I'm going to ask everybody, and hopefully you'll enjoy listening to their answers. So the first question that I've asked everybody is to just tell me what condition it is that they have that causes them to be in pain. So I'll start off by answering this for myself. So I have something called Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. It's the hypermobile type, and it's a genetic condition that affects the collagen and connective tissue in your body. Connective tissue is pretty much everywhere in your body, so it causes a whole range of symptoms, but one of those symptoms is chronic pain. That can be pain from dislocations and subluxations that I get, but also just more general pain because your body's trying to work harder to hold itself all together, and because your muscles and ligaments and stuff tend to wear more quickly and also tire more quickly, you just tend to get a lot of pain with EDS, and yeah, it's widespread everywhere, and just is relentless sometimes. So I have that, and then I also have something called gastroparesis and intestinal dysmotility. Basically my stomach and intestines and everything don't move food along properly, so my stomach doesn't empty properly, so it's kind of partially paralysed, and then the rest of my digestive tract just doesn't move food along as it should, and this also causes a lot of pain, horrendous abdominal pain. Well, I say all the time, I find that I have peaks and troughs, so sometimes it's kind of just sore, and other times it's really painful, but yeah, it causes a lot of pain. I have got other things as well. I don't know whether they necessarily cause pain. So I've got bladder dysfunction, and I guess that does cause pain, because if I am struggling to empty my bladder or I go into retention, that can be really painful, but I can self-catheterize now, so generally it doesn't get to that point, but I do still get bladder pain from time to time. POTS doesn't really cause pain, I don't think. I was also diagnosed with ME way before I got diagnosed with EDS, and I don't know, we're not sure whether I still have that diagnosis or not, or whether it's now explained by other things, but ME can also come with pain as well, and again that's very much widespread pain, almost like when you've got the flu or something and you just ache all over. That's the kind of pain that I tend to get with my ME. So I've got quite a few different things that cause pain, and also I had leg surgery in November. So I had a femoral osteotomy where they broke my thigh bone, rotated it and put a rod and screws in, and that has come with a whole new set of pain. The pain that I felt after that operation was one of the worst pains I've ever been in. I think obviously they've broken the biggest bone in your body. It is painful, really painful, and since then the recovery has been incredibly painful, and I'm still in a lot of pain now because I've got problems with my knee, probably because the rest of my leg is now out of alignment, so I'm waiting to see my surgeon to try and find out what we can do next, but it's probably looking like more surgery. But yeah, this is more, I suppose it started as more acute pain, but it has become quite chronic just because of the complications. So yeah, I've got quite a few different causes for my pain. But yeah, they all kind of come together to just give me pretty much having pain all the time.
Some of the conditions that I live with that cause pain would be Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, Fibromyalgia, chronic headache syndrome, chronic migraine syndrome, gastroparesis, and an unknown bowel disorder that they have classified as IBS, but my doctor doesn't believe that that is true.
I have a genetic condition known as Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. It's a condition that affects the connective tissues in your body, so it makes them too elastic. It affects your joint stability, so I have frequent dislocations and subluxations of my joints. It affects my organs. I have frequent hernias and prolapses, and it affects my autonomic nervous system, so my heart rate and also my digestive system. And lastly, it affects my skin. I have really stretchy but really fragile skin that takes a really long time to heal.
I've been diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome and fibromyalgia, and they suspect that I have POTS, which is postural orthotic tachycardia syndrome, and I also have a chronic pelvic pain disorder and suspected mast cell activation syndrome, which again, it's all in the process. The ones that are suspected are in the process of being sort of diagnosed. It's just that the pandemic sort of made it difficult to make progress. So the main thing that I have obviously is Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, and that's a connective tissue disorder. So basically it affects people differently who have it, and there's loads of different subtypes. But basically it means that the connective tissue doesn't work as it should. So if you think about like your connective tissue being like made of like a basket weave, basically it's just sort of really loose and not sticking together really well. So I get loads of dislocations, which are really painful, and it causes me pain all the time. Like every single second that I'm conscious, I am in pain, and I often wake up in pain. It gives you gastrointestinal issues, it gives you bladder issues, it gives you, gosh, just everything that could go wrong really with a person, because your connective tissue is everything. So it's not a very fun disorder. Dislocations, for example, I've laid in bed before and my knee's dislocated itself, and that's happened quite a lot of times actually. It's not very nice. I got dressed and my shoulders displaced itself, and it's basically like that now. It's been like that for more than a year. They say it's not severe enough for surgery, so I just have to deal with it, so that's another thing that's painful all the time. I have a tear in my hip because of it, which also causes me a lot of pain. So I have a labral tear, which is really, really painful, and again, every minute of the day is painful, and it can affect my mobility a lot as well. If you like this, oh, here we go, my jaw. So I also have TMJ, which I cannot say it, so I'm not gonna TMJ if you Google it, which is another thing that's like a dislocation. So basically, I have been told not to let myself yawn fully, because if I yawn fully, then my jaw might dislocate itself, because that's happened a few times before. So I have to stop myself from yawning properly, which is really fun. Fibromyalgia is the other thing I suppose I should explain. It's sort of just a term for like pain everywhere. You have to have a certain number of like points in your body that cause you pain, and I don't know, I just describe it as sort of like all the pain I get overlapping from both conditions and stuff is just it's sort of like someone set your body on fire, and then they're like jabbing you with like needles and knives and things, and it's not very nice. It's really horrible. Every second of the day and night, forever. So that's fun. Chronic pelvic pain disorder. Just it is what it says on the tin. Really, I just have pain constantly, sort of in my abdomen area. It's not very nice. It can be so bad that I struggle to wear clothes. Like all I can wear is pyjamas, as in like a night dress thing. I can't have anything pressing on my stomach at all, not even pressing, I just can't have anything on it, it just hurts so badly. Or a really loose dress, and that's all I can really wear. And sometimes it's like that for months, and that really affects things like going out the house and stuff, because I mean, if all I can wear is a really loose summer dress and it's winter, then it's quite difficult. But I just can't have tights on or anything like that because it's just too painful. Or leggings, not even loose leggings, I just can't have anything pressing at all. It's just horrible. Bladder as well, I had a cystoscopy before, and that's caused things to be even worse. So that's something that causes me a lot of pain as well. And that's just a really sort of horrible, achy, burning pain that I'll often get, and it'll like flare up, and it'll be really bad for maybe a week or two at a time. And it's sort of not comfortable ever, but like it's really, really, I just want to curl up in a ball and just have a hot water ball there and stuff, really, if it's really flaring up, which is not nice.
I have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, which is characterised by overly stretchy joints, joint pain, chronic fatigue, gastric problems, and other organ issues. I have chronic fatigue and chronic pain because of my hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, and it is quite difficult to live with.
I have been officially diagnosed with hypermobility syndrome disorder, which means that the collagen in my body is faulty and it can't hold all my joints in place, so the ligaments and muscle have to work for it. I was previously diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, but due to the criteria change, I didn't fit in anymore because I hadn't had certain things, so they changed it, but I'm still getting the same treatment as I was when I was diagnosed with EDS. I'm also seeing a cardiologist for POTS.
I was diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome when I was 16 years old. Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome is a very, I won't say it's a rare disorder, but it's an under-recognized disorder. It's genetic. It affects all of the collagen throughout my body, causes all of that collagen to be very stretchy, very lax, causing a plethora of issues, but most notably would be hypermobile joints that dislocate very easily. Also really stretchy skin that doesn't heal very well, that scars very, very easily, bruises very easily, because so collagen is kind of that glue that makes up your entire body, right? So think of that glue that makes up everything from skin to tendons to muscles to organs, is too stretchy. So over time, all of these issues would stretch out. So over the time since I've been diagnosed, I've had multiple, into the thousands, I don't know, joint dislocations. I've had my gallbladder removed because it was stretched out. I will be having surgery next week to have a rectal prolapse corrected at age 28. Let me tell you, I was the youngest one in that surgical teaching room by 30, 40 years. My mitral valve is stretchy, so I have a bit of a heart murmur, and we have to watch that yearly. Also causes some laxity in my vessels, my blood vessels and my veins and arteries. So that's with the easy bruising, as well as I have to be monitored very closely for aneurysms. And the list goes on and on and on and on and on.
I have a condition called Hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. With that, I have osteoarthritis. I have polymyalgia, and I also have polyarthritis. Polymyalgia is an inflammation of the temporal arteries that go to the brain, and they cause pain in my muscles. I also, in the polyarthritis, I have pain in my joints. They become stiff, and when I am using them or overusing them, they become stiffer and more painful.
So the next question that I asked everybody is to let me know how long that they have had this condition / pain. For me, I was born with EDS. It's a genetic condition, but it didn't really kind of start to show itself until I was around about 15, although it took me until I was 25 to get a diagnosis. So yeah, for a long time I didn't know that I had EDS. As I said, I was diagnosed with ME first, so I was diagnosed with ME when I was sort of 15, 16, and then with the gastroparesis and the bladder problems and all that kind of stuff, those weren't diagnosed until after I had my EDS diagnosis. So I've had them pretty much, well, not the ME, but the other things. I guess I've had like pretty much all my life, because I've always had problems with my digestive system, I've always had problems with my bladder, and I've always had like the EDS problems with kind of dislocations and subluxations and all the kind of stuff that comes with that. But I didn't know it was those things until I was about 25. So for a long time it was undiagnosed, and we didn't know why I was in so much pain. And then the pain with regards to my leg I've had since November 2019.
Most of these I've had my entire life. They're genetic disorders, so I was born with them. The arthritis I've probably had since my mid-teens.
It's a condition that I've had all of my life. We noticed when I was very young that I was incredibly flexible. I could do the splits and contort my body into all these weird positions without even having to try.
That's a difficult one to answer, because I've had, technically, obviously, Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, and that is genetic, so I've had it my entire life. The first thing that ever was noticed was that my thumbs dislocate really easy. Sorry if that freaks anyone out. They dislocate really easily. Like, I was at nursery once, and I think my teachers saw it, and they were freaked out, and they spoke to my dad after, and then they said, we think she's injured her hands or something, and they asked me if it hurt, and I was just sat there like, pop, 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 no, my hands are fine. But we didn't really realise that it was anything particularly related to anything at all. So, but I think I got my first sort of major dislocations sort of about 13, 14 years oldish. Shoulders, I was playing squash once and it came out and it got stuck, and I was just stuck there, my arm in the air for ages, and the teacher was like, what are you doing? Like, shoulders just come out. Oh, okay. So I just sort of stood like that for an hour. Then eventually I managed to wiggle it back a bit. And then I had a knee dislocation for the first time when I was about 14, which was horrible. I can't describe it. It's like a grinding kind of pain. It's agonising. You can't walk on it. You can't put weight on it. It's really, really awful. And it's just awful, awful, awful pain. And again, I just thought, because I used to do a lot of sport and stuff like that, and dance, I thought maybe it's just because I've been playing loads of hockey and stuff like that, that kind of thing. But my pain sort of really started when I was about 15, 16-ish. So basically, I've been in pain constantly for 10 years. That's what I would say. If you're asking me how long, I would genuinely say about 10 years is since the symptoms really got really bad. So further than that, I don't actually remember what it feels like not to be in pain, which is not really a very nice, it's not really a nice thing to say when you're my age or younger or older, or it's just not a nice thing to say, but it's true.
I've had the pain for about 3 years, just less I think actually. I've been diagnosed with hypermobility for 4 years, but have only been diagnosed with hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos for about a year.
I've been in pain all of my life, but I was always complaining about being in pain of some kind, but it wasn't major until the late August, early September of 2017, when my hips just gave way, wouldn't let me walk anymore, for no reason. I was just walking around and they stopped, which was very scary.
I have been sick for 20 years. 20 years ago, I started to realize that I had some weakness and some pain and some tremors in my right hand. And over a little bit of time, that progressed up my right arm. And I ended up seeking medical attention to investigate what was going on.
So the next question that I asked everybody was to tell me about what their diagnosis process was like. So did it take a long time to be diagnosed? How were they diagnosed? And that kind of thing. So for me, the diagnostic process was long. So as I mentioned, I got ill when I was about 15, although obviously I was born with the conditions. It just showed itself when I was about 15, and it took quite a while to get diagnosed with the ME. I went through a whole load of tests and seeing various doctors, and it basically kind of came down to they couldn't find anything wrong with me, and so they called it ME because they didn't know what else to call it. So I got that diagnosis first, but it never kind of really explained everything. So for the next 10 years, I basically had to fight for my diagnosis, and it was very, very difficult because nobody took me seriously. I don't know if it's because I was a young girl and they kind of just thought, oh, you know, it's all in her head. A lot of it got blamed on mental health stuff, and I just kind of was seen as a bit of a hypochondriac, I think, because I started kind of researching into possible causes. That kind of brings up red flags, I think, with doctors, because they think you're too informed, you've kind of researched stuff too much. But actually, if I hadn't researched stuff, I probably never would have got my diagnosis. So yeah, for the next 10 years, it was pretty hellish, to be honest. I went through various different doctors, various different tests. I had mental health admissions because, well, partly because like just the impact of having a physical illness and not having a diagnosis had a massive impact on my mental health, but also a lot of my like gastro symptoms were kind of put down to eating disorder stuff. And although I did have an eating disorder, it was never looked, like the physical stuff was never looked at either. So I ended up being sectioned, and it took a long time for my GP, like I got a new GP basically, and it took seeing her and for her to have a friend who had EDS, for her to kind of start to think actually that that's what she thought that I had. So I was lucky in that I was seeing her, because I don't know where I would have been if I hadn't been seeing her. She referred me to a rheumatologist, and then they diagnosed me with joint hypermobility syndrome, which isn't really a diagnosis anymore. And then I was referred up to somebody in London, and I got my EDS diagnosis. And then from that, because I'd been diagnosed with EDS and I was seeing a specialist, they then referred me to other specialists who then diagnosed like the gastroparesis and the bladder problems and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, the diagnostic process was horrible, and I know that that's quite a common, you know, way of being diagnosed for a lot of people. It's not easy, it doesn't happen very quickly, and you do spend a long time undiagnosed, which has a huge impact on your mental health.
the diagnosis process was really hard. I had a doctor that was very dismissive for most of my life and actually lied to me about a lot of my test results and things like that. So unfortunately, because of her, it wasn't until my late 20s, early 30s that I was actually diagnosed with most of my conditions. So that was hard because I had to go see several specialists, and that took months on its own. And every time I went to see one specialist, they had to send me to another. So it took about a year to get most of the things diagnosed.
The diagnosis process for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome can be incredibly long and incredibly complex. Very few doctors have an awareness of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, so misdiagnosis is really common, or just being completely ignored and written off as being a hypochondriac. There are 13 different types of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. 12 of them, they've been able to identify the genetic markers that cause the condition, so people can go for genetic testing and have a conclusive answer. The type of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome I have is hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and they haven't been able to identify the genetic marker yet. So the diagnosis is a little bit more subjective. There's a really strict list of criteria that you have to meet in order to get a diagnosis, but with so few doctors having an awareness of the condition, it can take decades. So I didn't receive a diagnosis until last year, despite having multiple dislocations a day, living with pain, having organs that don't quite function as they should.
So how long did it take me to get diagnosed? Basically about nearly 10 years, about nine-ish, bit more than 9 years to get diagnosed, which is ridiculously long, but it's really common for people with what I have. Yeah, it's not good at all. Basically, like 9 years, a decade of my life wasted, being pushed around and from doctor to doctor, and doctors just saying, oh, there's nothing wrong with you, your blood tests have come back fine, these blood tests have come back fine as well, and so have these ones, and just your temperature's fine, or every medical test, every scan they would do, they wouldn't see anything, and they just say that therefore there's nothing wrong with me, which is a bit disheartening when no one believes you. Yeah, I've had a lot of bad experiences. I had doctors I think I did A&E once because I was just in so much agony and we didn't know what was going on, and the doctor said to me, it was a man, by the way, oh, are you sure you're not just on your period? Like, no, actually, I'm not. Not that would be relevant, okay? Obviously endometriosis is something that affects a lot of people, but when you're talking like, oh, my back's killing me, my shoulders are killing me, my entire body feels like it's on fire and it's being stabbed, I don't think that's just endometriosis. If it's my entire, like, my hands, my shoulders, my ribs, everything, but that's the kind of comments that you get as a young woman in pain, unfortunately, and it's really not, it's not right. So the first person I saw was a GP, I think, obviously. I didn't really know what was wrong with me. I just sort of knew that my back was really hurting me and my legs, etc, etc. So I had some spinal manipulation, which was kind of nice for about an hour, and then I was sort of back to square one again. I've had physio, all that sort of thing, and then they just kind of gave up, like they didn't know what was wrong and they didn't really try to find out. So I went to university, and so I've been in pain for a few years, and I had the worst GP ever. She was a total cow. I'd say worse things about her, but no, she's really, really, really mean to me. It's like I was having all these bladder syndrome, like problems, pain and everything like that on top of everything else, and she just told me, just accept that you've got chlamydia. And I said to her, I haven't slept with anyone ever, so I don't think that I do. And she's like, oh, I guess not then. But she was just really horrible to me, even though I was really suffering, and she didn't ever want to refer me for anything either. Like when I had my hip tear, a doctor up north thought it was a hip tear, but I knew I was going back down to uni, so he said, oh, I'll put it on your records and write a letter to her and everything so that she can get you seen for a scan down south. And she just read it and went, no, you're not having a scan. So now I'm left with permanent pain, and I've had loads of treatments for it that haven't worked, and there's nothing they can do about it, and it's all because of her. So that's all part of diagnosis. I got sent to pain management before they even tried to diagnose me as well, just by her, and again, they just were very keen to push a lot of drugs on me with bad side effects without actually diagnosing me, and I don't really think that's a good approach at all. I'm not saying people don't need pain medication, but I feel like you want to know the root of the problem, or else how do you know if you're treating the right thing? You don't really want to be giving drugs to people unnecessarily, is in my opinion. But so anyway, that didn't help. Basically, it was just a cycle of that for a few years. Then I came back home, and then again didn't get anywhere for a while. And then finally, I actually had a good GP who's left now. Awful, absolutely devastated when she left. But she actually listened to me, and I said maybe you could refer me for rheumatology, because my boyfriend had met someone with Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, and he said literally this is you all over. Everything you're saying is exactly like her. So I thought, well, rheumatology seems to be the way to go, and thankfully it actually took me 3 rheumatology visits. So going to one, getting told it's basically nothing, or it's just a bit of joint hypermobility, suck it up. Then again the same thing the second time, and then 3rd GP referral, finally walked in, and I was terrified because it was a male doctor, and I've nothing against men, it's just that sometimes with the young women they can be a bit sort of like, oh well, whatever, you're just hysterical kind of thing. I literally walked in, told him everything, and he just went, you've got Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. It was just, obviously he checked me over and did all the proper stuff that they have to do, but he just was like, yeah, you're right, it is that. And that was just kind of crazy, because you just don't think you're going to get there, and I don't know, you're made to feel like you're crazy for so long by so many different doctors, and just, the thing is, people don't believe you in your life either, like family or people who are supposed to be your friends or work or anything, or they just don't believe you without a diagnosis. And I don't know, there's issues with having a diagnosis as well. I think like it can, I don't know, it can be depressing at times, but it's sort of worse if you don't know what's wrong with you. And if you don't know what's wrong with you, how can you try and do anything to make it better? You know, like if you didn't know that you had diabetes, for example, then you wouldn't know to try and be mindful to eat less sugar, would you? When that's a really easy step to make things better. But if you don't know, how would you? Why would you do it? So it's the same thing, but doctors don't seem to care when it's pain, you know? So basically at the end of like more than 9 years, I walked in and got that diagnosis finally, which was a big relief. And since, my brother has since been diagnosed, and well, we think my mum has got it, and she's waiting, but obviously pandemic, so that's my diagnosis story.
The diagnosis for Hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome was quite tricky. Many doctors didn't want to diagnose me, many wasn't sure what it could be. It was actually my physiotherapist for my chronic pain who suggested that it was Hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos. She was my first physiotherapist. I got her for my back pain, and she suggested it was Hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos when I started having gastric and heart problems, and I ended up getting diagnosed about a year later.
For the hypermobility syndrome disorder, I went to the doctors who did like the simple Beighton scale test, and he sent me for physio, but we found that physio was just making it worse and it wasn't good, so my physio gave me a referral to someone higher up. It's like a more specialist kind of physio, but he was very adamant on, I really don't think you're going to get in, like you don't meet the criteria, but if you want me to refer you, I can. I really don't think you're going to get in, but we're like, you know, what's the harm? So I was referred, and I saw the person, and within the first 2 minutes it was like, you have some serious issues, and hearing that was scary. So then from that referral, I was then referred to the University College in London, in late 2018, early 2019, I think.
The diagnosis process for Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome is exhausting, I guess is the best word I could think to use. It takes years, because so many medical practitioners have only heard of it, once in medical school and nursing school. It was a very small box in the corner of that med school textbook, because it is come across so seldomly, and it is diagnosed so seldomly. The biggest problem that I see with getting EDS diagnosed is the lack of research as a whole. So when you take a bunch of diagnosed EDS patients, we all look fairly different and have we have a similar form of issues, but it'll be worse in some and not so much in others. Some will have all this GI involvement, others will be significantly just musculoskeletal. And the other issue, there's so many issues. There are 13 subtypes of Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. The most common is hypermobility type, which is diagnosed just by symptoms. You'll actually go in front of a doctor, a geneticist, or a doctor of some sort, and they will take a look at your joints and see just how many of them hyperextend. They'll look at to see if your skin's involved, that kind of thing, while others take actual blood genetic testing and genetic mapping. And that's kind of the path you take to get to that. When I was first diagnosed, when I was 16, I was diagnosed just from symptoms. And then I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, I finally had genetic testing, because back when I was 16, it wasn't affordable and insurance wasn't going to cover it unless EDS was going to kill me right then and there. We live in America, kids. Whereas now it's much more affordable. So I had it done, and that's how we discovered that my specific case is very strange. I have lots of Marfan's genes as well, which is it's another connective tissue disorder that's generally related with men, while EDS is related with women. So I am a mixture of all of that. It took a very short time for me to get diagnosed with EDS and hypermobility, but it took much longer to get it to a point where all of my doctors believed it, because I had a blood test that said, yes, she has Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, which as a practicing registered nurse makes me sad about our healthcare system, but that's neither here nor there. Like I said, I was diagnosed through symptomology and also a blood test with a geneticist that mapped my family's health history as well as my symptoms when they started. It was a very long appointment.
I underwent a bunch of things like MRIs and a lumbar puncture and CAT scan and stuff like that. And my neurologist determined that I had multiple sclerosis. And so I underwent a medication that was injected weekly for the next 10 years. And its purpose was to slow down the progression of MS. In the 10 years, I would have exacerbations or flare-ups of times where I would be in pain. And it consumed over a period of time my right side. And so with each exacerbation, I would end up down in bed. I would be sick. The pain would be terrible. It would be nauseating. And I battled that through that time faithfully until I moved and saw a doctor, and he evaluated my medical records and told me that I had what was called a conversion disorder, that I needed to take my medication, pack it up, throw it out, and get on with life. Anybody that has had a doctor tell them that when you know with everything in you that you're dealing with chronic pain and disability, it becomes very emotional and very upsetting. I thankfully had a husband that stood by me, encouraged me, walked alongside of me, and we ended up moving. And I got connected with yet another doctor who evaluated my medical records. And he began treating me again for MS. I did that for a couple of years as he investigated me, watched me have these exacerbations of pain, and then come back to some sort of normalcy, and then again, exacerbation of pain. He did some more scans and determined that I did not, in fact, have MS, and connected me with a neurologist who evaluated my medical records and told me that, in fact, I had a rare condition called hemiplegic migraines. I went home and I learned everything I could about having hemiplegic migraines. The more I learned about it, the more I learned about my exacerbations, the more I tried to learn to take care of me. I knew that I would have an exacerbation because I physically overdid and I got tired and I brought on all this pain. And all I had to do was rest, take it easy, and I would rebound, and then I could get on again with living. But the more I did that, the more exacerbations I had. And it got to where I was doing simple things and I was exhausting out and my right side was hurting. My husband endured an accident and he took a retirement. So we moved back to the Ozarks where we had started from, which is where I'm currently at. 2 years ago, April, I had a hemiplegic migraine exacerbation that not only took my right side in pain, but I started to endure pain in my left side. And over a little bit of time, that pain crawled from my foot to my leg, to my hip, up to my torso, and into my shoulder, and actually started to affect the left side of my face. I knew from 10 years of being involved with hemiplegic migraines that this was something bigger. So I began to talk to my new doctor about it. I had some heart health concerns and I was sent on to cardiology. On January 7th of this year, I had a stress test, and in that stress test, it brought on an exacerbation of pain in my body that I had to endure and rest through and medicate and take care of through the remainder of that day. On January 8th, I had a stroke, and I was sent to the stroke ICU to be treated for that. So here I am in the stroke ICU, and I'm trying to regain my speech and my right side, and I am enduring pain, and walking from bedside to the bathroom was almost unbearable. Walking the nurse corridor was downright exhausting, and the pain made me nauseous, but I was able to do it. And so I was released from the hospital, and a few days later, I was connected to go see a geneticist. I walked into that geneticist totally knowing that I was going to get a genetic confirmation about my hemiplegic migraines. Only I walked out with the diagnosis of having hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome.
And then the last question that I asked for this part of the video is just understanding what it's like to live with your condition. Obviously this is very subjective and it's going to be different for everybody, because even if two people have the same condition, they're going to have really different experiences of it. So the kind of things I asked people to talk to me about were things like, how does the pain affect your life? Does it stop you doing things? And has it changed your career, family and long-term plans? So for me, pain has a massive effect on my life. Every single day I'm in pain and there's no getting away from that. I do take various painkillers, but they don't always help, or they only kind of take the edge off the pain a bit. So yeah, it impacts me hugely. It makes you feel exhausted, because being in pain constantly is exhausting. I mean, if you can imagine, you know, a time perhaps when you've been in pain with something, if you can imagine being in that pain for a prolonged period of time, you might just get to understand a little bit about how draining it is. So it affects massively on my fatigue levels. I do have chronic fatigue as one of my symptoms as well, but I think the pain really feeds into that. So it makes it very difficult to do kind of normal stuff. So, you know, day-to-day stuff I find difficult to do, you know, like doing the washing and having a shower and preparing meals and stuff. I still live with my parents, and my pain, I guess, is part of that, because if I wasn't in pain and if I didn't have all the other symptoms as well, I probably would have been out there getting a job and you know, having a career and have my own house and all that kind of stuff. So my pain has massively affected my life, just what I do with my life, and being able to kind of progress in the same way that friends and family have. It's impacted on the career options that I have. So I always wanted to be a doctor or to work in the medical field in some kind of way or form, and over the years I kind of tried various things, I studied for various things, and I just got to the point where I realised that it just wasn't a feasible career option for me, because it's a very kind of physical, hands-on, intense kind of career where, you know, you might have long hours and stuff, and I just physically couldn't cope with something like that, which is obviously pretty devastating when, you know, you have this career set in mind of what you want to do, and then you have to completely change your whole outlook on life basically. And it took me a long time to kind of accept that that wasn't going to be my path. And even now I still, you know, feel sad at times because I can't do what I wanted to do. And some people might see that as being very negative and saying, well, you know, why don't you look for ways around it? Why don't you adapt? And to a certain extent, yes, you can adapt and you can try and find ways around it. But for me, I got to a point where no amount of adaptations were going to make it possible for me to be able to do that career and to enjoy it. And so I just had to kind of come to the realisation that actually it wasn't the best thing for me. And now I really don't know what I want to do. I mean, I make these videos and I really enjoy, you know, talking to people on here and educating about chronic illness and disability. But yeah, it's difficult. At the moment, I just physically wouldn't be able to work a full-time job or even a part-time job, to be honest, because of the pain and also the fatigue and all the other symptoms as well. It just wouldn't be possible for me. It would make me more unwell, and I have tried to work in the past and it's kind of gone okay for a little while, and then my body has just crashed because it can't cope with keeping up with that kind of lifestyle. So yeah, it's massively affected career and work, and it's also hugely affected family life. It has a big impact just on living at home with my parents, because I'm in pain, I need more help from them. So I don't necessarily have a traditional relationship with my parents, you know, that perhaps my friends would. I rely on my parents a lot more, you know, to care for me and stuff, which as a 33 2-year-old woman nearly, you know, isn't what I had planned. But at the same time, I do feel very lucky that I've got that support, because without it, I would be completely stuck, to be honest. But also it's affected my, you know, me job, like starting a family. I find it really hard to date. Obviously I'm not really going out a lot, so I find it very difficult to meet people. I've tried using dating apps and stuff, but there's a lot of people on there who don't want to be with somebody with a disability, and I have been told that on numerous occasions. You might match up with someone and then they realise that you use a wheelchair or you're chronically ill, and they say, oh sorry, I didn't realise you were disabled, I don't want the disabled girlfriend. And that is pretty heartbreaking, because it just feels like you're not worthy of love. And I know that isn't true, and I know there are people out there who can see past that and can see you for who you are, but it does make it very, very difficult. And as such, you know, I'm single, and I have been single for pretty much all of my life, and that has a huge effect on my mental health, because I want to be in a relationship, I want to have a family, I want to live in my own little house and just do all those like things that everybody else is doing. So yeah, I think basically in a nutshell, pain massively affects my life. My life is completely different to what it would have been if I hadn't experienced chronic pain. But maybe it's not all bad. I think pain has helped me to understand people a lot more. It's helped me to empathise with people a lot more. It helps me to enjoy the little things, because I can't do all of the big things all of the time, and I can't necessarily have a normal, whatever normal is, you know, daily life like people do. I really appreciate, you know, going out and sitting in the garden and feeling the sun on my face, or having a cuddle with my nephew, and just like really little things become so important. So although there is a lot of negative stuff to having chronic pain, I feel like it has helped me to see things in a better way, and it's helped me to be able to advocate for myself more, to be able to be more confident and to talk about things that I probably would never have spoken about if I hadn't had chronic pain. So it's not all bad, and there are good points, but it has massively had a huge effect on my life.
Living with a pain condition is not easy. It's very tiring to be in pain all the time. You have to plan your entire life around it, in the sense that you can't do too much or too little, because both of those things will cause pain. And just constantly feeling in pain and being in pain and all these things, it causes both physical and mental fatigue, and that's something that is probably as hard as the pain sometimes. My conditions have gotten to the point where I can't work anymore, which was really hard, because I did have a career plan, and I've had to stop that. And sometimes I can't spend as much time with my family as I want. I've got a younger sister who I'm very close with, and sometimes I can't see her because I'm in too much pain and I'm in bed all day.
Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome is an incredibly painful condition to live with. People that have Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome tend to have a really, really high pain threshold. And I think most people, even doctors, don't necessarily realise how much pain we live with day to day. For me, I would say my day-to-day pain is a 4 or 5 out of 10. And with that pain, I try my best to still function and live a normal life. So I think very few people are aware of how much pain I'm in day to day. It's not just the acute pain of having a joint dislocation, it's generalised joint pain, generalised organ pain, which can kind of come and go, but it's always there as a kind of background noise, I would describe it as. When my pain is really bad, it can be really difficult to get out of bed. It can be really difficult to access the right pain medication that I need. I have very intensive physio to help stabilise my joints and strengthen the muscles that support my joints, which does help alleviate pain. We've just come out of lockdown in the UK, and during lockdown all of my hospital appointments were cancelled. So gradually, as lockdown has gone on, I've been in more and more pain, and I've also experienced more frequent dislocations, so that's been great fun.
I won't sugarcoat it. It's hell. It's absolutely hell. It's made me want to die plenty of times because of it. I've thought about killing myself so many times. I've tried to before because it's so bad, and I think there's a lot of people out there that that's true for, because there's a lot of reasons, but it just affects every single moment. And it's also just the thought where you think, like, I'm quite young and I've already been in pain for like 10 years, and it's the thought that you've got, I don't know how many years left, but maybe 50 years or something, 60 years of this, and you just think, is that something I really want to do? And sometimes the pain is so bad, I mean, it's never good, but it's so bad that you think you can't do another second. From day to day stuff, I mean, I don't leave the house without taking ice packs with me for my back, etc. And ibuprofen gel. I mean, I'll talk about that more in the management, but I basically have to lug stuff around me all the time, so I can't leave the house without something to help me, even if I'm just going and having a coffee with a friend. I've really gone many of those now, for like half an hour. I can't leave the house without it. I have to have ice for my back or something. I just can't cope. This is going to sound hilarious, I can't really, I struggle to carry my own bag, even if I've got nothing in it apart from my wallet, and it's not got any money in it, just like a debit card. If I've got that in my bag and like some hand gel and that's it, that absolutely kills my shoulders to carry it. I find like excruciatingly painful. Tying my hair up, I find excruciatingly painful. Like, for me to do this and actually put my hair in a bubble, I know that sounds ridiculous, like how can that possibly be painful? That is agony for my arms. I really struggle to do it. I really find that so hard, and I thought it was normal. I thought everyone felt like that. I literally didn't understand how all these people on YouTube were doing all these amazing hairstyles. I thought, but how? Because it's so painful to put up your hair, even in just a ponytail. I don't understand, but as it turns out, most people don't have that problem. So, yeah, it stops me from doing a lot of things. I used to volunteer at History Museum. I used to volunteer there and dress up and everything, and I absolutely loved it, and just tell people all kinds of history stuff, and I just absolutely loved it. It's one of my favourite things I've ever done, but I eventually stopped doing it just because I just found it so painful standing up for even a couple of hours. I just found it so painful doing that. So I really struggled. I would like to do it again, and I hope that maybe I could do it again one day, because I really miss it. It was really fun. But that's the thing, being in pain all the time, it stops you from just everything. You know, we're not even talking like my major career goals or anything here. That's just something that I just enjoy doing in my free time. It's a nice thing to do, and I couldn't do it anymore. I mean, career-wise and everything, I don't have a degree, and I should have a degree, because I did go to university, but my health deteriorated such a lot when I was there. My pain got considerably worse, like really bad, unbearable, and to be honest, the university handled it appallingly badly. It's like they've made everything accessible now there's a pandemic, but they couldn't possibly do anything to make it accessible for me when I was there. So that's part of that. So that's something that's really affected. I don't have that degree, which is awful, because obviously it's costing me a lot of money and stress and just misery, and it's just really frustrating, and it's not where I thought my life would be. Yeah, so the pain makes you really tired as well. It really, really wears you out. And I don't just mean, everyone says, oh, I feel a bit tired because I've worked all day. But I mean really, really exhausted. Like, I've been unable to really get out of bed before. I couldn't lift a kettle. I couldn't pick up a piece of toast to feed myself before. That kind of thing. Like, we're talking extreme fatigue, not just I'm a bit tired, I've worked too hard. So again, that can stop you from doing anything and everything. Friends and family, I don't really have any friends, but I've had a lot of friends that I'm not friends with anymore, because they've said horrible things, they've treated me really badly, they've made fun of my illness, they've expected me to do things I can't do and been sort of horrible about it. They've left me out because of it. Like, people, once you say, I'm sorry, I can't do something, people just stop caring. They're not interested in you if you don't have the money, and if you can't physically because of pain or whatever, if you can't come out with them and do what they want to do, people stop being interested in you. If I want family one day, I don't know if I can, you know, partly because of pain, obviously, because I struggle to just exist as it is, never mind look after somebody else. But, you know, genetically as well, my main thing is that if I had a kid, there's a 50% chance that they would end up like me and they'd be in pain all the time. And I just think, is that something that I could do to somebody else? Because they might be fine, but they might not be fine.
Living with my condition has been quite difficult. It took away, it just made some things in my life more difficult. I had to stop swimming, which I loved. My academic ability became lessened as I wasn't able to focus as long and retain information as long as I should be. It has made daily living more difficult. Easy tasks such as showering or brushing your teeth takes a lot of energy. And for me to attend school on a day-to-day basis is very high energy and very demanding. But I do it. It's just very difficult for me. It's very exhausting and it creates a lot of pain. Standing hurts, sitting hurts, lying down is really the only thing that relieves it, and even then, lying down for too long can make it worse, which is just very cruel, I think. The pain means that I have to have special things in my school. I take lots of medications, on and off. I sometimes take lots of vitamins and pain, and sometimes I'm on nothing at all because nothing works. I've had to change my career plan, as I originally wanted to do that, but obviously with joints that could dislocate, it's just not an ideal career path. And I can't stand up for long surgeries, and I just don't have the dexterity anymore to be a vet, and that was my dream job for a really, really long time, and it's not anymore, which is sad, but it's okay. I just had to find something else that I wanted to do, and I have found something. I'm not 100% on it yet, but giving up on your dreams can be really hard, especially since it's something that you just feel shouldn't have to make you give up on your dreams. It's something I was born with, even if it was undetected for most of my life. I still had it from the beginning. I still had it when I was healthy and strong.
I found that with these conditions, my social life has drastically changed. I used to be at the park every day with my friends when I was in primary school. Secondary school, yeah, I was still out with my friends, but then late secondary school to early college, it wasn't good. I don't really leave the house other than for college. My independence has gone downhill, so obviously if I faint, then I need help. If I dislocate something, I need help. So I can't really be alone any of the time.
There are a lot of unknowns. A lot. I never know when I wake up in the morning, will I have slept on 2 dislocated hips and I can no longer bear weight on my legs? Is today a day where I will be completely reliant on my wheelchair, or will I be able to stand a bit? Side note, I am also a full-time wheelchair user because my hips, knees, and ankles dislocate now when I stand because they are so stretched out. But some days, good days, I can stand briefly and walk a little bit inside my apartment, or, you know, here and there. I can shift my weight, I can stand up to get something off of a tall shelf. but I never know when it's going to be the last day where I can do those things. And I think that's the scariest part about living with something as rare as EDS and as under-researched, is that no one can really tell you what your future looks like. So you get diagnosed with cancer, you know, they map it, you get a PET scan, and they can say, yeah, well, judging by this, and this, you have about this long to live, or this is what your future is going to look like. With EDS, they can't do that. And yes, I just realized that comparing it to cancer was in very poor taste. But you can see what I mean with a lot of diagnoses in the medical world. There is a mapped out plan and treatment plan, as well as a progression. With EDS, you don't have that. So it's scary because it is so rare. Generally, there's not going to be many people in your family that understand. EDS is a lot of unknowns, and it's a lot of chronic pain because of those constant dislocations and partial dislocations or subluxations. You know, you can only dislocate and stretch out your joints so much for so long before you're grinding bone on bone, and that's horribly painful. Major dislocations in especially larger joints, you're gonna have nerve damage, and you're gonna have the results of that. I mean, you hear people talking, able-bodied people with no connective tissue issues who have dislocations. My background's emergency medicine, and so, you know, I see those patients and we're immediately thinking, can we preserve their nerves? Has there been any nerve damage done? Is there any permanent tears? We'll say, I'm doing this, you know, with some joints over 100 times a day. Yeah, that living with that pain makes it halfway to impossible to plan anything. I mean, I have no idea what I'm going to feel like in 3 hours, more like much less so tomorrow or next week or 5 years from now. It makes it difficult to plan anything. Which can be very isolating, because after a while, you know, you keep turning down invitations because you're hurting. Those invitations stop coming. And you don't feel well. You don't feel like reaching out socially, but you still want to feel included. But it's an easy way to lose friends, to lose family members, just because it's hard to really totally encompass what your loved one with chronic pain is dealing with on a daily basis. And I think that's the hardest part. That, you know, oh, well, you're disabled, you're supposed to be strong and overcome. Yeah, well, some days my body says, Ryan, get the fuck back in bed. You're not going to overcome today. But I can't do that. I work full-time at a hospital as a nurse. I can't. If I dislocate a joint, it's right back to the floor with you, or what, I get fired and then I'm on disability and make no money because this is America.
Since January, my stroke, my body has had more flare-ups, and I regain less and less, to where now I use a mobile wheelchair when I am outside on our acre that we own, or if I'm in town and we're going in anywhere. I very rarely will use the shopping cart if I feel like I'm having a good day. But it's a short-term visit in the store, as the pain in my hips and my ankles and my arms increase the more steps that I take. Having chronic pain affects us daily. I daily live with a level 6. If I get up and around and I am doing, that will start to climb. The more I do, the higher that climbs, to where if I'm not careful, I am disabled before the day is out. I choose what I can do and what I can't. It's okay to say no. It's okay to say yes and then have to turn around and say no, because we're constantly changing in what's going on with our bodies. And these are some of the things that I am learning.
So that's all the questions that we're going to answer in this video. If you enjoyed this one, there will be a second video coming very soon, which will look at more like management techniques and things like that. So do keep your eyes peeled for that one. I really hope you've enjoyed this video and found it informative and a bit helpful if you're experiencing chronic pain as well. If you have enjoyed it and you'd like to see more, please give me a like and subscribe to my channel. Also hit the notification bell. That means you'll get notified every time I upload a video so you don't miss anything. Leave me a comment, let me know if you experience chronic pain, if you can relate to anything that I've said, or if you don't experience pain but you've learned something from this video, please do tell me as well. I'd love to kind of hear what you've learned from it. And also let me know if there's any other videos you'd like to see me do, whether it's about chronic illness or disability, or whether it's about fashion or beauty or Disney or travel or anything else. Please let me know what you'd like to see, because it really helps me to go away and do some planning. Also come and follow me on social media. My links are in the description below, but I'll pop my Instagram and Twitter up here. Those are the two places that I'm mainly on. So do come over and say hello, and I'll see you in another video very soon. Bye!